Unless you implicate Tommy Egan, you're going to prison. Again,
I know you.
you're involved with a bad man. If Miguel Garcia finds out that you're fucking his little sister, he might take you off the map before I do.
Now that my brother is working with Tommy, we need the Serbs on our side. Unless we're ready to go to war.
Now, we all know Tommy's goal has always been to connect directly to the cartel and cut out the middlemen, and he's finally in a position where he can do that. He's been building his organization over the past few weeks, and he now has the South, the North, Southville, County Lockup, and Garfield Park. And as Miguel's grandmother warned him, he's coming for him next. But it's not going to be as straightforward for Tommy. With money and power comes a whole lot of enemies, and that includes drug gangs, Claudia Flynn, Shanti, and also law enforcement. So Tommy will have to stay 3 steps ahead of each of these enemies if he's to finally achieve his goal and become the biggest drug dealer in Chicago. Now, with that being said, episode 8 is normally a huge turning point where we normally see secrets being revealed, a major character death or two, twists and turns, and who knows what else. So as always, we're going to be running through a preview connecting the dots to previous teasers and trailers for all things for Season 2, Episode 8. Now, the title for Episode 8 is Dead Reckoning, and the synopsis reads, Tommy makes bold moves to connect the CBI directly with the cartel as he hustles to stay ahead of the many adversaries out for his blood. Meanwhile, Diamond is forced to make decisions that has dire consequences. Now, what do they mean by dead reckoning? Let's break this down. It's normally something that they use at sea, calculating one's position, estimating the direction and distance traveled by using previous positions, by looking at speed, where they're going and the time it's taking. But how does that relate to Tommy and the drug game? Well, many of you who have watched my episode breakdown know I focus on chess as a particular theme for episode 7. Everyone in Chicago was making calculated chess moves, putting positions in play with an idea of where they were heading. So you can only assume everybody will be calculating the positions of their enemies and trying to put moves in place to catch up to them and attack them with the use of a strategic plan, especially law enforcement. We've got Stacey Marks going in hard on not just Vic Flynn, but also on Tommy Egan and Maria Garcia. With Vic, she tells him unless he implicates Tommy, then he's gonna go to prison. That's because her job is on the line. There's more violence that's about to erupt in the city of Chicago, and she also has blood on her hands with Detective Vargas' death. She's been going extremely hard, and there has been a slight change to her character ever since episode 5, because she is under extreme pressure. Stacey pushed hard to get this task force, and now she needs results, but Vic isn't getting them for her. He is dropping a few bits of information here and there, but you can definitely tell he's withholding a lot of what he knows about Tommy and the CBI.
What's this? It's a tracker. We need you to put it on Egan's car.
Now, this is something I mentioned in my breakdown, Detective Vargas' parting gift, the tracker. Just like Chavo said in episode 7, everybody knows Tommy Egan's name in Chicago, but is the tracker on his car, and is that how Stacey Marks has managed to find Tommy? Because if it is, the tracker will be a huge problem for him, so I just thought it was worth mentioning and something just to keep our eyes on.
You show up in my city selling a whole lot of drugs.
You gotta use that word allegedly.
Although they don't show this particular scene in the trailer, this is where she is going to tell Tommy he's shown up in Chicago selling a whole lot of drugs in her city, with Tommy's response being a classic Tommy line, you gotta use the word allegedly. That's because Tommy knows how to play law enforcement. He's a seasoned criminal who may have a long rap sheet, but he's somehow managed to evade the orange jumpsuit for a very long time. The only time we did see cuffs slapped on his wrist was season 2, a plan orchestrated by Ghost, who was always 3 moves ahead of Angela, but since he's come to Chicago, he's had his head on a constant swivel, staying 1 step ahead at all times. He's been wearing gloves, keeping eye on law enforcement, and taking precautionary measures like switching phones. Now, Stacey Marks isn't here for fun and games or Tommy's jokes. She tells him if Miguel Garcia finds out he's been sleeping with his sister, he might just take him up on that before she does. So this relationship is going to be at the center of it all in episode 8. We know law enforcement snapped these images of Tommy and Maria earlier in the season, but so did Janard in episode 7. And is it a coincidence that law enforcement are now using this to their advantage? Could Janard or Shanti have given that information to the feds? I'm not so sure. Shanti's move is to sit back and let Tommy destroy himself. So I don't think this is a move from Janard or Shanti, but it does seem like this relationship could finally come to light with Miguel and Abuela. Now we've also got Stacey Marks visiting Maria, and she tells her that she's involved with a bad man. But that's nothing new to Maria. She knows exactly who she's in bed with, despite her wanting a different life. Although she doesn't know Tommy like we do, there are a lot of secrets and a lot of things that went down in New York which Tommy wouldn't be proud of. But will this be enough to scare Maria into helping the feds? That's the question. The spotlight is now going to be firmly on Maria's next move, which I have been questioning all season. Will she stick by him and be his ride or die, or will she turn? I think we're about to find out. Now with law enforcement hot on their heels, Tommy tells Vic that the feds are onto them, and I have no doubt Tommy will be keeping a very close eye on Vic from now on, especially after what he saw in episode 7. Despite Vic killing Vargas, Tommy will still have suspicions about Vic, but we are going to hear him throw Tommy down the wrong direction by telling him Janard and Claudia are the ones who pointed feds in their direction, when we all know too well, it has been Vic who's been forced to provide intel. Whether Tommy can work that out before it's too late, who knows, and who knows what Vic is feeding law enforcement in episode 8. Let's not forget he did pull the trigger on Detective Vargas, so he's got to play it very carefully with both Stacey Marks and Tommy Egan. Now, one thing I did notice is Vic has ditched the wire. He's not wearing it in any of the scenes for the episode 8 trailer, and he also did take it right off before he killed Vargas, so even if Stacey has suspicions it was Vic, she will find it hard to prove it, although she does have him dead to rights for Colin's murder from season 1. Moving over to Claudia Flynn and the Serbs, we hear her saying now that her brother is working with Tommy, they need the Serbs on their side unless they're ready to go to war. Now, it's not just Claudia who needs the Serbs, Merkovich also needs Claudia because he's been cut off by the Estrada cartel. Unless he can find a new plug in Chicago, he's got a big problem, and so we were always going to see him making a move. There was no way he was going to take this lying down. He's someone who has way too much pride. He wasn't just going to get on his knees and beg Shay, and he certainly isn't going to go down without a fight. He's leading the attack against Tommy and the CBI in episode 8, and the Serbs are going to come in all guns blazing. We've got the Serbs on one side, the CBI on the other, and despite Janard making moves behind Tommy's back, he is going to have to fight alongside him to protect what they have. Now, with this being episode 8, I am expecting a lot of twists and turns, and maybe even a death or two. So with that being said, with the Serbs being cut off from their product and losing territory as the days pass by, is it the end of the line for Merkovich and the Serbian network? Is this where we finally say goodbye to the Serbs? You can take out the head honcho, but the organization won't go with them, so I do think that's something to bear in mind, although I'm not so sure how the Serbs managed to pull this back, but I am 50-50 on whether they make it to season 3, so let's wait and see. Now, there is one more point I do want to make on this shootout between the Serbs and the CBI. We've got Tommy holding it down, there's Vic, and there's also Janard, but where's Diamond? The synopsis teases that Diamond is forced to make a decision that has dire consequences, so whether that has anything to do with not being here alongside the CBI fighting to protect what's his, who knows, but something seems to have triggered Diamond, so that's just something to keep an eye on. I do think he's someone who is starting to have doubts about the game and being drawn into a normal life with Gianna and Leon, where he doesn't have to constantly look over his shoulder or lie to his parole officer, but as we all know from various other characters like Ghost, Lulu in Raising Kanan, and Tariq St. Patrick in Power Book 2 Ghost, there is no leaving. The sins of your past will always find a way of catching up on you, and for people like Diamond, no matter how much good they do, there's only one of two outcomes, and we all know what they are. Now, with that being said, that's a breakdown of the trailer for episode 8. An episode that I do expect to continue changing the landscape of Chicago's drug trade, and an episode which could finally expose Tommy and Maria's relationship, and with that thought Tommy's plans in taking Miguel Garcia's territory next and meeting Shay. I don't think it's going to be as straightforward as Tommy thinks, and I do think Miguel Garcia will have one move up his sleeve. But drop all your thoughts and predictions down below on all things for season 2, episode 8. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.